Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Brajajanarandana Yashodanandana Brajajanarandana Yamunatira Vanamsari Yamunatira Vanamsari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Brajajanarandana Yashodanandana Brajajanarandana Yamunatira Vanamsari Yamunatira Vanamsari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Hare Bolo. Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Hare Bolo. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radhe. Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radhe. Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Gaura Pimanande, Jaya Mishupad, Paramahamsa Pridrat Gachaja Stotra Satya Sri Simad, His Divine Grace, Shilabhai Charanarvinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada ki, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki, ISKCON BBT Founder Acharyas Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada ki, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki, Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Janitai Gaura Pimanande, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Guru to Sri Gauranga, all glories to Sri Prabhupada. Om Agyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Sharakaya Taksurinbilitam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Jena Bhuttale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Juta Parakamalam Sri Gurun Vaisnavam Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatan Vitam Tvam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakanvitam Sha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hare Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Narayanam Namaskritya Dharam Chaiva Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayed. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, let us first offer respectful obeisances unto Narayana, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayan Rishi, the supremmost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta Prayeshabhadrishu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. By regularly hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering service unto the pure devotee, all that is troublesome within the heart becomes destroyed practically to nil, and loving devotional service unto the Supreme Lord, who is praised with transcendental songs, it becomes established as an irrevocable fact. Idam Bhagavatam Nama Puranam Brahmasamitam Uttama Charitam Sakara Bhagavan Rishi Nishreyasaya Lokasya Dhanyam Swasyayana Mahat. The Srimad Bhagavatam, known as the Grantaraj, the king of all Vedic literatures, is the literary incarnation of God. It is compiled by the incarnation of God, Srila Vyasadeva. It is meant for the ultimate good of all people. It is all successful, all blissful, and all perfect. Sri Anya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gauda Bhakta Vrinda Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Surabhyaya Namaha Om Surabhyaya Namaha Om Surabhyaya Namaha Mukam karoti vasadam pangom langayate girim Yat kripat maham bande Sri Gurum Vinataranam Yat kripat maham bande Sri Gurum Vinataranam. Hare Krishna. Welcome to our Srimad Bhagavatam class. Continuing first canto, chapter 3, entitled Krishna is the source of all incarnations. And today we're reading text number 32. Yes. Ataha param yad avyaktam avyudha guna brimhitam adrista adristasruta vastutvat sa jivo yat par avyaktam avyudha guna brimhitam adristasruta vastutvat sajivo yat punar bhavaha ata param yad avyaktam ayudha guna brimhitam adit sajivo yat punar bhavaha ata yad avyaktam avyudha guna brimhitam adrista sruta vat sutvat sajivo yat punarbhavaha.
Jivo yat punarbhavaha ataparam yadavyaktam avyuda gunabrahmitam adrishtva srutavastutva jivo yat sajivo yat punarbhavaha
Sajivo yat punarbhavaha.
ataparam yat avyaktam
Ataparam yadavyaktam
avyuda gunabrahmitam
ayudhya gunabhrimhitam
adrishta shuta vastutva
adristatruta vastutvat
sajivo yat punarbhava
sajivo yat punarbhavaha. Ataparam yadavyaktam ayudha gunabhrimhitam adristatruta vastutvam sajivo yat punarbhavaha. Ataparam yadavyaktam ayudha gunabhrimhitam adristat sajivo yat punarbhavaha. Ataha, this, param, beyond, yat, which, avyaktam, unmanifested, ayudha, without formal shape, guna brimhitam, affected by the qualities, adrista, unseen, asruta, unheard, vastutvat, being like that, saha, that, jivaha, living being, yat, that which, punaha, bhavaha, takes birth repeatedly. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Beyond this gross conception of form is another subtle conception of form, which is without formal shape and is unseen, unheard, and unmanifest. The living being has his form beyond this subtlety. Otherwise, he could not have repeated births. Kind of repeat after me. Beyond this gross conception of form is another subtle conception of form, which is without formal shape and is unseen, unheard, and unmanifest. The living being has his form beyond this subtlety. Otherwise, he could not have repeated births. Purport. As the gross cosmic manifestation is conceived as the gigantic body of the Lord, so also there is the conception of his subtle form, which is simply realized without being seen, heard, or manifested. But in fact, all these gross or subtle conceptions of the body are in relation with the living being or the living beings. The living being has his spiritual form beyond this gross material or subtle psychic existence. The gross body and psychic functions cease to act as soon as the living being leaves the visible gross body. In fact, we say that the living being has gone away because he is unseen and unheard. Even when the gross body is not acting, when the living being is in sound sleep, we know that he is within the body by his breathing. So the living being's passing away from the body does not mean that there is no existence of the living soul. It is there. Otherwise, how can he repeat his births again and again? The conclusion is that the Lord is eternally existent in his transcendental form, which is neither gross nor subtle like that of the living beings. His body is never to be compared to the gross and subtle bodies of the living being. All such conceptions of God's body are imaginary. The living being has his eternal spiritual form, which is conditioned only by his material contamination. Translation again. Beyond this gross conception of form is another subtle conception of form, which is without formal shape and is unseen, unheard, and unmanifest. The living being has his form beyond this subtlety. Otherwise, he could not have repeated births. So this verse is explaining about the different levels of forms, rupa. We have the form that we see every day when we look in the mirror, according to where we are born, according to what species we are born. There are a vast of all of these different species. How many species of living entities? How many species of forms? Yeah, 8,400,000 different species. And that's quite a large number. And within all of these species, for example, human species, there are 400,000 different human species. And within all of these different species, not one form is the same, isn't it? Even we say twins, people who are born at the same time, they're not identical. We say identical, but there's difference. Although sometimes it's very difficult to make the difference. So all of these forms exist in the material world due to the unlimited desires that one has, due to the unlimited material desires. Desire, Prabhupada explains, is something that cannot be stopped. So the living entity resides in these different forms. And that living entity, the spirit soul, has an original spiritual form that is explained as the Swarup Siddhi. Difficult for us to understand because we are conditioned by this material form. So Prabhupada is explaining here how the that living entity or the jiva when the jiva leaves the body, what actually happens? Important to understand actually because that's explained in the Bhagavad Gita. You should either sit here or there. Yeah. That's it. What happens when we leave this body? We should be concerned about this because one day it will happen. And it doesn't happen only when we become old men. Not only old people leave their body. Sometimes young men leave their bodies. Sometimes children. We don't know. At any time we can leave our body. So it's actually a very great science to learn. Human form of life actually is meant to learn how to leave, how to exit from this body. And yogis, that's what they practice. Yogis who go very, very deep within their subtle body. The subtle body actually is more powerful than the gross body, is more mysterious. This gross body is also very full of mysteries actually. Very complex, this gross body that we see. Subtle body even uh, more complex. Within the subtle body, that's why those who are uh, yogis, they can develop these different, what we call siddhi, different perfections. They can contradict the laws of nature. They can float, or they can walk, just like Lord Jesus, it is claimed he walked on water. Did you ever try to walk on water? Better not to try if you don't know how to swim. Yeah. We know very little about this gross body. We know even less about our subtle body. And we know even less about our spiritual body. So this gross body is material, made of how many elements? Hmm? Five. First one is not water. What is the first gross element? They go from gross to subtle. I mean, the five elements of the gross body. First is earth, water. Water is second. Earth, water. Bhumi er ano. Earth, water, fire, air, and ether. Yes. So these are the even what we call the gross material elements of this gross body. We can only see earth, water, fire, air. Can you see air? Cannot see air. Ether? Cannot see. We can only see the blue sky. What human beings have an opportunity to understand. One time I was in Secunderabad. There's Secunderabad and Hyderabad at our temple, and we had a book table, and people would stop sometimes to look at the books. And there was one boy who actually became a devotee. I was explaining to him about this gross body, subtle body, how we have different kinds of bodies within this body. And then there was another boy who was like very attentively hearing, because he'd never heard this before. Most people actually don't know this science. And this is the science that there's one of many books published, written by Srila Prabhupada. One book is called The Science of Self-Realization. What is self in Sanskrit? Atma. Atma. We are the small Atma, Jiva, Jivatma. And Krishna, he is the Param Atma, Supreme Atma, yes. So, the subtle body, when we have to leave this present body, either because of maybe some accident or because of some disease, at some point we have to leave this body. But we only leave the gross body, the subtle body. What is the subtle body? How many elements in the subtle body? You sure? Yes. Mind, intelligence, and ego, or so when we leave this body, the subtle body, uh, this gross body, ceases to exist. But the subtle body does not cease to exist because within that subtle body, we still keep, if we still have, uh, it is in the subtle body that we keep our different desires. What are the three activities of the mind? Mind, thinking, then feeling. Thinking is different from feeling. Thinking, feeling, and then willing. Willing means having desire. Thinking, feeling, and willing. And then that means that whatever material thinking is still present, whatever material feeling is present, and whatever material willing or material desires are present. That means that we are guaranteed by the laws of nature another material body within any of the 8,400,000 species. So this is being referred to here that the living entity, having come in contact with material nature, remains encaged in this material world, remains connected with these modes of material nature, as long as we don't develop our higher consciousness. And there is a whole process to develop that consciousness to the point of actually it is possible within this life to actually understand or realize our spiritual identity. And we come to understand from Shastra that actually, unless we take up this practice and unless we come to that position of understanding our actual identity, our actual spiritual identity, we cannot be happy in this material world. That is the constitutional, Prabhupada would say, it is the birthright. What does it mean, birthright? If one is born in a particular country, then it is his right, for example, when he reaches the age of 18, whatever the voting age is, he has a right to vote. He has a right to so many facilities that are in his country. He has a right to get a passport. He has a right to so many things. That is called birthright. So on a higher level, all of us, our birthright, because our original birth means being born. Actually, living entity is not born. Krishna is not born. Living entity is also eternal. So our natural, we could say, eternal birthright is to be always in full understanding and full happiness. Yeah, that is why in the material world everyone is making so many plans to try to be happy and to try to understand or to cultivate knowledge. So Shastra is telling us that as long as we don't cultivate real spiritual or transcendental knowledge, and unless we develop true spiritual or transcendental happiness, we are forced, we will continue to be forced by the laws of nature to again take another body repeatedly. In the Bhagavatam, it nicely describes how when he is in the womb of his mother, at a certain stage of development, maybe around 6 or 7 months, the living entity becomes conscious. Even within the womb, just like Prahlad Maharaj, when he was within the womb of his mother, he was able to hear the Srimad Bhagavatam because his mother was being protected by who? Narada Muni. Yeah, she was staying in the ashram of Narada Muni. Why was she staying in the ashram of Narada Muni? Yeah, because the demigods wanted to kill her, or to kill the child actually. So Narada, who was uh, very fortunate to be hearing on a daily basis, therefore from his appearance, from his birth, he was already uh, understanding about devotional service. So it is said that the living entity understands at a certain point when the body is developed, the consciousness comes and one understands, oh no, I have again made the same mistake. I am again in a mother's womb. And it is to the Lord that, my dear Lord, when I will come out of the womb of my mother, please allow me to take up to the process of spiritual life so that I can actually not again be forced to take another birth. We don't understand that we have been in the material world practically speaking since time immemorial. Therefore there's that nice Brahmando Brahmite Kono Bhagyavan Jeev Guru Krishna Prasadipai Bhakti Lata Bij. After wandering in the different universes, now we are living in one universe, such a big universe, we think. We think it is a huge universe. Actually, most people don't know that there are many more universes. This is only one universe. Just like the the universes are coming out of Mahavishnu from the pores of his body. Just like from the pore of our body comes perspiration. Uh, so there are unlimited universes, and the living entity continues to wander in all these universes, totally forgetful of his spiritual identity. So it is a very difficult situation, and unless one is fortunate to come in contact with this knowledge, not only coming in contact with the knowledge, but actually becoming serious and becoming determined to uh, not repeat the same mistake, then we will simply continue our suffering in the material world. So therefore, that expression, die before you die. Nobody wants to die. Why? Die before you die. We are being instructed if we know about the gross body and the subtle body, then we will understand die before you die. Means we have two bodies, two material bodies. This body we see, the gross body, and then the subtle body. This gross body will die automatically. But the subtle body will not die so easily. Why the subtle body will not die? Huh? Because it is subtle. Huh? Subtle body is not eternal, Prabhu. No. The subtle body is made of mind, intelligence, and ego. So try to understand. In the subtle body, it continues. It is not eternal. The soul is eternal. There is a gross body we see. There is the subtle body that we don't see. And above these two bodies, there is the soul body. The soul. The soul is eternal. But the soul has come in contact with the material energy. Yeah. And is entangled with gross and subtle bodies. Is entangled especially with the subtle body. Because as long as we are connected with material thinking, material feeling, and material willing. Mind is, as we mentioned, thinking, feeling, and willing. So try to understand. This means that die before you die, before this gross body dies. We should put an end to our material thinking, our material way of thinking. We should develop spiritual way of thinking before this gross body dies. We should stop, put an end to material feeling. but develop spiritual feeling. And before this gross body dies, we should stop material willing or material desires, but develop spiritual willing or spiritual desires. That is the meaning of die before you die. Because if we still have, Prabhupada explains, if we still have even one, even a small material desire, when we leave this gross body, we have to again take birth to fulfill that small, even one, even one material desire. Most people have more than one. We have unlimited material desires, you see. Even in one day, what to speak of one lifetime, what to speak of many lifetimes. And whatever these material desires are unfulfilled, we carry this. It's like sometimes people, they move from one house to another, isn't it? And especially those who are grihastas, we in the material world we tend to accumulate. We buy this, we get this, and we become attached to all so many things. So I remember one of my godbrothers in Canada, uh, who was a grihasta. He was telling me that he had already moved from his old apartment, old house, to a new house. And normally when you move, you have to, at least in America, here in India as well, but like in America, people, they have to rent one big truck to put in all the furniture. So anyways, this devotee, he had already moved, already 1 year had passed, and he was telling me, I still have not opened my 40 boxes. So this is our problem in the material world. We accumulate because we become attached, isn't it? Because of material desire and material feelings and material thought, we become connected and we become attached to so many things, to so many material things. So to give all of that up is not easy. Actually, it is not possible unless we develop higher level, higher level of thinking, feeling, and willing. That's what Krishna consciousness is all about, developing these higher levels of thinking, feeling, and willing. Otherwise, when the moment to leave this body will come, and we don't know, that can happen anytime. That can happen anytime to anyone. If we have all of these still material desires, material thoughts, and material feelings, then we are forced. We will be forced by the laws of nature to remain in some particular species. So therefore, the Bhagavatam and other Vedic literatures are urging us, are inviting us, are informing us of the reality of life, of the facts of life. We say facts of life. The real facts of life are to know that our suffering in the material world will continue as long as we maintain these material connections. So an intelligent person in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is mentioned that actually only very intelligent persons become devotees. Only very intelligent persons become serious devotees. Many people become devotees, but not everyone becomes serious devotee. Yeah, we're still lingering on or hanging on to different material thoughts and feelings and desires. Yeah. So another reminder in this verse that we need to develop our what is called the higher self. The lower self is this gross body and subtle body. The higher self is actually the, uh, the spirit soul living entity. So, any thoughts on this? How to die before we die? How to stop the material desire? That's a good question. Hare Krishna. The only way to actually stop material desire is to increase spiritual desire, to replace. And we replace material desire, we replace material feelings, we replace material thoughts by spiritual thoughts, spiritual feelings, and spiritual desires. Then automatically anything material will cease to be there, isn't it? So therefore, we are cautious to not associate with people who are materialistic, who have materialistic people. They only know about material thoughts, material feelings, and material desires, isn't it? Yeah. So the more we endeavor in this way to cultivation of Krishna consciousness means cultivation of material thoughts, material feelings, I'm sorry, spiritual thoughts, spiritual feelings, and spiritual desires. Krishna consciousness means spiritual thinking, spiritual feeling, and spiritual willing. So the more we increase that, then it means that there's no room for other things. That requires, in the beginning, uh, an effort, a concerted effort on on our part. This is what the whole process of sadhana bhakti is about. The more we are regulated in everyday hearing from Shastra, every day chanting the holy name, all of these different activities, the more we apply those, the more we are attentive in following these different guidelines given by Shastra, it will develop. Okay. Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai Srila Prabhupada ki Gaura Pimanandi Hare Krishna.